So here we have a classic solve question where we're going to use the calculator to get the answer. We're going to type in 14 minus x over 3 alpha equals 3x. Try to copy the question exactly onto your calculator screen and you will see that it matches perfectly. And then what we can do is we can press Shift Solve. And you'll see this black bar x equals, and a lot of students see that and think that that's the answer, but the calculator just needs that input to get started, and so it doesn't really matter most of the time what that number is. We just press the normal equals now, and then when we see this L minus R screen, that's when we know that it's finished. We don't really have to know what that is, but that is when it's finished. It's not the black bar. That's the first thing. So we have an answer of 1.4. And when we think about it, that is so powerful for the exam because now we know that 1.4 is the answer that we're trying to get from this quite complicated algebra here. And then having that answer there first means that we will be able to check if we're on the right track. So let's go to the working and have a look at what sort of process we can go through to try and get this 1.4. Looking at this fraction at the moment, the scariest part is this sort of denominator of 3. So to get rid of a fraction in algebra, we multiply both sides by 3. And if there are extra terms, we multiply them by 3 as well. So what I mean by that is if I put a plus 2 here and I want to times by 3, I have to times everything by 3. Imagine a bracket around this whole thing and a 3 in front here. So that is the process of getting rid of a denominator. We're just going to times by 3, and so we'd have 14 minus x, and then 3 lots of 3x is 9x. Okay. Now, we wouldn't necessarily need to do this in the exam, but if we wanted to check that this line is actually correct, we can put this one into the calculator. Make sure that we press equals on the black bar because it's going to show 1.4 and you might think you're on the right track, but remember we're looking for that L minus R screen. We can confirm that we're still on the right track because we've got 1.4. If I put something different in here because I made a mistake, then we won't have 1.4 in here any longer. So we know that we've done this first line correctly. And so here we're just going to continue add x to both sides because x is on both sides of the equals right now. 14 equals 10x, and then we can divide by 10, and that will get rid of this 10x, and we'll have x equals 14 divided by 10. If you're not too sure, check it on the calculator. That's 1.4. So by having the answer first, this is going to be extremely powerful for you moving forwards, and I'll show you some more examples now of where we can use this process. Here's another question where we can use the calculator to get our answer, or at least really help us to make sure that we're on the right track. This question is about density, volume and mass, so we need to know our density formula. Density equals mass over volume. Okay, now when we look at the calculator's buttons that we have available, we have A to F, we have an X, a Y and an M. So if you have a formula in maths or physics which is different to one of these letters, we just have to change it. Okay, change it for a letter that we actually have. So D we have on our calculator, M we have, X for V, or you can choose any other letter because we don't have V. I'm just going to use X. Okay, and so now when you type this onto the calculator, we have to match up the density with the D, the volume with X, and mass is the one that we're trying to find. So let's have a look at how that looks on the calculator. Density, we're going to put 8 in the black bar for density and press equals. The volume is x, so we have to scroll down until we see x, and I can put 1,500 in there. And the mass is the one that I actually want to find. So I must make sure that I'm on the M black bar when I press my final equals. If I'm on the D or the X black bar, then when I press equals, it will try to find density or X. I want the mass. So make sure you're on M, and when we press equals, we will get our answer, which is 12,000. Okay, so the calculator is telling us that the mass of this case, the metal, the mass is 12,000. Okay, we just have to be careful with units here, just like in physics, because this is grams, and this question is talking about kilograms, so we'll come back to that later. But this most important thing is that the calculator has now told me that mass is 12,000. And I might not be that great at rearranging equations, but now that I have this 12,000 answer, I can try some different combinations. So my two numbers are 8 and 1,500, and I have to try to get the number 12,000. And there's only a couple of combinations that we can use. We can either times them or we can divide them. So 8 times 1,500. I can do 8 divided by 1,500, or I can do 1,500 divided by 8. Okay, with these formulas, density, speed, and many, many other formulas, there's only a few combinations that we can actually use, but you might be able to spot that times in them will work, and so that is my next line of working. Density times 1,500, which was the volume. And so the calculator is being used to help us with our working out, and it gives us the correct answer moving forwards. This is going to gain you so many marks, and it's why I think it's so powerful and so useful for you. We're not too worried about the rest of the question here. I'm just showing you how to use the solve function. So let's have a look at another example. I've got one more example here of how we can use the solve function to really help us with a question that historically students really struggled with this. So let's have a look at this question where we've got potatoes here, and then we minus 1/5 of the potatoes, and it gives us 8,000. Okay, now the correct way, or the best way perhaps, of doing this is to use the idea of the multiplier. So if you're taking off a fifth, that's the same as multiplying by 4/5. But what about if you don't remember that in the exam? So let's try and have a look at how we can use the calculator to help us. This box here is the thing that we don't know, so let's call it x. And then the fifth is a fifth of the original, which we don't know, so we're just going to say that that's a fifth of x. Of means times, so we're saying the box, we don't know what that is, minus a fifth of that will give us 8,000. Okay, we can try to create this on our calculator. X minus a fifth of x is 8,000. Okay, now I know that you might be thinking, well, turning this into algebra is something that I'm not going to be able to do, and that's fine, but I just wanted to show you that if we just call it box or a space that we're trying to fill it, then we can try and say, well, what would be a fifth of that? If you're really stuck, let's just try a number like 15,000. Okay, minus a fifth of 15,000. Does that give us 8,000? No, it doesn't. Okay, we do that calculation and it doesn't work. It would be too big. Okay, it would be too big. So it would be bigger than 8,000. We could try a smaller number. Let's try 9,000. 9,000, oh, I've just gone off the screen here. So 9,000 minus a fifth of 9,000. Does that work? No, that's too small. And we can keep going up and down using the calculator to help us. This is a bit of an aside, but I just thought with this question, you can see that trying a big number like 15,000 doesn't work, a smaller number, that doesn't work, and you can go kind of in between until you get the right answer. This is called trial and improvement, and it's another strategy that I really think students don't use enough to help them when they're stuck. Okay, so x minus a fifth of x equals 8,000. This is 4/5 of x, and then we would divide by 4/5. But perhaps you don't get that working out. You still have your answer off the calculator, 10,000, and you've got some working out there that might warrant you some marks on a question that we just leave blank usually. Okay, so try to use this in maths. You might have to use a different letter if you have a formula like area equals pi r squared or something. We don't have an R button, so change it for an X. And I just wanted to mention as well, just while we're here, because there's an overlap of physics where you're going to have about 25% of your test on doing questions where you find a random formula from the formula sheet. Let's just pick potential difference is equal to current times resistance. Okay, and every single equation that you're going to do in physics, you can change to something like this on the calculator. Shift solve, put the numbers in that you have, and make sure the one that you're trying to find, let's say the current, which is an I, that's annoying, but the current is the letter B. Make sure that you press B equals as your black bar. We don't care what's in the black bar for the one we're trying to find. The calculator just needs something to get started. But A and C, that would be the voltage and the resistance. Make sure that those match, and then that you're on B when you press your final equal sign. I hope that helps. If you have any questions, get in touch. Have a look on my website where you've got lots of questions to practice like this. And yeah, see how you get on. Let me know how you get on.